Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms. As we close out the year, it's time for one of our favorite shows and our favorite guests. It's you. Ask the guys, listeners' questions, and our answers. And we've got some good ones today on the Real Estate Guys radio program. Registration is now open for the Real Estate Guys 20th Annual Investors Summit. Imagine spending an entire week with like-minded investors, world-class educators, and real-world professionals. Returning in 2022, the editor of the Gold newsletter, Brian London, international real estate developer Beth Clifford, the author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin, Jim Rohn's 18-year business partner, Kyle Wilson, and the rebel capitalist, George Gammon. And joining us live and in person for his 10th Investors Summit, best-selling author and the Rich Dad advisor for real estate, Ken McElroy. Plus, lots more to be announced. It all begins June 10th, 2022 in beautiful Belize. Visit realestateguysradio.com and click the tab that says Summit to reserve your spot. Go to realestateguysradio.com, click Summit, and make plans to spend a week with the Real Estate Guys, George Gammon, Ken McElroy, and an all-star faculty on the 20th Annual Investor Summit on Sand. Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms, and joining me, as he normally does, it's our co-host financial strategist, Russell Gray.
Hey, Robert.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, and it looks as though it's been several months since we have done an Ask the Guys show. That's your chance to ask the Real Estate Guys questions. It's easy to do. Go to the website at realestateguysradio.com and click Ask the Guys. Lots of them have piled up, so we're going to get right to it. Just two caveats. First of all, Russ and I are not tax or legal professionals. And secondly, we don't give advice. We just give ideas and information for you to go research on your own. With that, question number one comes from Craig in Sheffield, South Yorkshire, Great Britain. Hi there, found your work through Robert Kiyosaki. I'm looking for my first investment property. I have a full-time business. Could you give me any pointers as to what to invest in first? A family home, a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, etc. And would it be better to flip a few, or would you say go for income on a buy-to-let? Regards, Craig. All right, Craig, well, I think this is a great question to start with because one of the things we always have to think about as real estate investors is what we call personal investment philosophy. Why is it that we want to buy a property? And I'll start by saying that flipping a house, buying something that needs some work, doing the work, getting it up in value and selling at a profit is a great way to make some money, especially if you're good at both finding a great deal and knowing what to do to make it better at a reasonable cost so there's profit margin. However, flipping a house is not real estate investing. It's a job. It's a good job perhaps, but it's a job. Real estate investing, on the other hand, is more of what you were talking about when you said, do I go for income on a buy-to-let property? So markets are different all over the place. Great Britain is a generally expensive market compared to other places. So it really is trying to figure out what's the first step and what investment property might make sense for you.
Yeah, I think one of the things to consider is if you're going to use leverage, if you're going to finance, if you are, then I think it starts with getting together with whoever you're going to be applying for that loan with and finding out what their lending criteria is. I'm not all that familiar with the lending environment in Great Britain, so I can't really speak to that. But here in the US, that's the first thing to do is you get together with a mortgage professional, you go through your financials, you look at your cash, your debt to income ratios, the strength of your balance sheet, your credit score, and weigh that against what type of financing is most favorable. And that may guide you a little bit, at least give you an idea about what you could actually qualify for when you go out in the market. Because when you do go out to look for a property, the best deals in any market, hot markets or slow, the best deals always go fast. And if you're going to bring financing, the more financing you have lined up, the better. Of course, if you're just going in purely for cash, that's a different discussion. And in terms of determining your return on investment, obviously, if you have leverage, it changes your return on investment. It increases your equity growth rate, but it decreases your cash flow. And so that's going back to what Robert was talking about, your personal investment philosophy. What are you investing for? If you decide not to use leverage, the other way to raise money is to syndicate. And that is to get partners, and you go in and buy a property together. And especially if you're going to be doing something like fixing it up, and that's where you're forcing equity, what we call forcing equity. It is a business, but it can be a profitable business, especially if you can do it on scale. So that's a way to approach it. In terms of flipping versus buying for income, it really just depends on how much capital you have to work with. If you don't have that much, again, you can syndicate. going with partners, or you can flip a few to make a down payment so you can buy one to hold. Our good friend Terry Kerr at Mid-South Home Buyers has made an entire career of doing that in Memphis. Flip a couple, keep one, flip a couple, keep one, flip a couple, keep one. And next thing you know, you wake up a decade later and you own 200 or 300 houses, and you've got a very profitable flipping business. So there's a lot of different ways you could go, but that's how I would approach the problem of deciding what you have to work with and then which way you really want to approach it in terms of how you want to live and what you're trying to accomplish yourself.
There's some other trade-offs to consider, and if we just use the example of do I buy a single-family house or do I buy an apartment, which we might call a condominium or townhouse, something like that, part of your consideration is your exit strategy. Now, I know you're thinking, well, I'm just buying my first property. Well, we always begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey would say, and you want to think about not just getting into the property, but getting out. One of the nice things about single-family homes is that they're readily liquid, meaning a single-family home could be sold to an owner-occupant. It could be sold to the tenant if they qualify. It could be sold to another investor. It could be sold to one of those syndicators that Russ talked about who's going to buy 10 or 20 single-family houses in an area. So you have more diversity. The extreme example is imagine you have a 780-unit apartment building. There really aren't that many potential buyers for something that big, making it a lot more illiquid. So while there are a lot of things to think about, I think you're on the right track. You're listening to podcasts, you're getting educated, you're trying to figure out, who you as an investor. And to that end, it might help to go through a little exercise on personal investment philosophy. If you've not done that, we have a quick audio workshop that doesn't cost anything. All you have to do is send an email to PIP, like personal investment philosophy, PIP@realestateguysradio.com, and that might help. Thanks, Craig, and also nice to hear from folks over the pond. Our next question comes from Toria in Lago Vista, Texas. Hello, Robert and Russell. Thank you a million times for what you do. I've been following you through the Rich Dad podcast by Robert Kiyosaki. Well, there's a common thread. That's kind of cool. And realized how deeply buried I was in corporate America. Due to the current circumstances, I quit my job as a teacher, moved to Texas, and I'm waiting on a check for $35,000 from my 401k. I know it's not much, but can I use it as a down payment on a property I can rent out to generate cash flow? Or can I use it to buy a piece of land and flip it for a profit? Thanks for your help. Well, here we are again, and that's why I kind of put these two questions together. So, Toria, yes, it's not a ton of money, but it is a great start. And in places like secondary and tertiary markets in Texas, that money can go a long way. If you were in San Francisco, California, we might have a different answer for you. But again, we're talking about either buying land, which we're turning around and selling. Now, it's a little different than flipping a house because what we do to add value to a single family home is, paint it, update it, carpet it, change the plumbing, put in new fixtures, and that often can give us a good yield on that work. In other words, we might spend $15,000 or $20,000, but that might result in a $60,000 or $70,000 increase in the price. With land, lots of stuff is possible depending on how big it is. You can get it rezoned, you can get it subdivided, you can come up with a plan for it. And just the very fact that you have a plan and an idea and you've done some homework can often make it more valuable. So there is a lot to do. It's probably enough money to be able to buy a single family house that you can rent out. Russ mentioned our friends at Mid-South Home Buyers. They do that in Tennessee. Lots of folks do this in lots of places. And what I mean is they find houses, they do the work, they get the tenant in, and they give it turnkey to you. That might be a way to go. The other side of it is for you to do all that work and then be the beneficiary of it.
Yeah, I think the thing to be concerned about with only $35,000 is most of it is going to go into the down payment and cash reserves, which is fine. But if you have any type of an early issue with the property, a roof, a plumbing issue or something, you have to have enough cash on hand to be able to take care of your tenant. And that can be a little thin. So if you get a very inexpensive property, you have great property management, you may be safe in that regard or better off in that regard, but you won't have much in terms of cash flow. So it can kind of be a lonely ride. If you buy the right market, you may catch a big upswing. In other words, a lot of people moving into the market, a lot of demand for affordable housing. There's a lot of people migrating right now because of what's been going on in the world, especially with inflation. And some of these lower price markets actually probably could catch a little bit of an updraft, if you will, as people are moving into those markets looking for affordable housing. So I would really hone in on having great great property management and making sure that you actually do get the rents coming in. The other thing you might consider, and I know I've kind of been, variation on a theme here, but there's other people out there just like you that don't quite have enough to do it on their own, but want to do it. And you could bring a down payment, or maybe part of a down payment. Somebody else could bring a down payment or some cash reserves or some working capital. 2 or 3 people with $35,000. Now, all of a sudden, you can actually go do a deal, maybe a small multi-unit property, a little bit better cash flow, maybe some opportunities to fix it up. The challenge with land, and there are things you can do. You can get land rezoned. You can do some entitlement work. There's things you can do to add value to land, but you don't have any income. Now, the good news is you may not have any tenant, which means you don't have to deal with those issues either. But unless you really know what you're doing, I would stick to something pretty basic where you can hire professional management to help you. So I applaud you for realizing that you were trapped somewhere and making the move. Now you're going to need to form strategic alliances to be able to aggregate some of the resources and education that you need. And I would peel off a part of that money, not much, because there's a lot of overpriced education out there, but I'd peel off a little of it for some education and make sure that you really know what you're doing before you're out there too deep into just learning by making mistakes.
I would agree. Thanks, Toria. And that kind of leads into our next question, which comes from Juan in Ashland City, Tennessee. Hey guys, how can I sign up for your syndication course? Well, there's a short question with a pretty short answer. Twice a year, we do a 2-day program called The Secrets of Successful Syndication, which is designed to teach people the things we've been mentioning about aggregating capital, putting together money to go do deals. It's also designed for the person who might consider passively investing in one of those deals and wants to know how to vet a syndicator. The next one is coming up in early March of 2022 in Dallas, Texas. Specifically to your question, Juan, how can you sign up? Just go to realestateguysradio.com and click the button that says Events, and you'll see the secrets of successful syndication. We'll look forward to meeting you there. It's Ask the Guys, your questions, our answers. We've got lots more today on the Real Estate Guys radio program.
Real estate investment advice right in your mailbox. Sign up for the free Real Estate Guys newsletter at realestateguysradio.com.
It's Robert Helms. Thanks so much for listening to the show today. I want to personally invite you to come see an amazing real estate market that combines excellent cash flow, offshore diversification, and what we affectionately call lifestyle investing. Come join me from April 1st to 4th in the beautiful country of Belize. The Real Estate Guys have been bringing investors to Belize for more than 15 years now, and our discovery trip is designed to show you the market like nobody else can. Sure, Belize is breathtakingly beautiful, the people are wonderful, and wait till you taste the food. But the real opportunity is the real estate investment potential. Demand for offshore real estate has skyrocketed since the coronavirus shutdown, and with retirees looking for lifestyle, the work-from-home workforce able to be productive from afar, and tourism coming back strong, now may be the perfect time to consider Belize as a place to diversify risk in your investment portfolio. There's all types of opportunity in Belize when it comes to real estate investing, including both long and short-term rentals, commercial and retail triple net properties, business opportunities, land acquisition, development, agriculture, and more. And as the only country in Latin America with English as its official language, it's easy to understand the law. Property rights are strong and contracts are in English. And on Ambergris Caye, a unique situation exists where demand for rentals continues to outstrip supply, creating a compelling environment for investors. So come see for yourself. Join me in April in Ambergris Caye, Belize as we study the market, learn about the sustainable drivers, and tour lots of beautiful real estate. And like all our field trips, there are no properties for sale during the weekend. Rather, you'll meet lots of local providers that will help educate you about the market so that you can follow up with them after the trip if the market is interesting to you. You've heard about Belize and the Real Estate Guys for all these years. Now come see what the excitement is all about. Plus, we'll have lots of time over meals and activities to talk about all things real estate. To get the details, go to the website at realestateguysradio.com and click on Events, where you'll find the Belize Discovery Trip. Once you register, you'll get information about our group hotel rates as well as travel details. So join me in Belize April 1st through 4th. It's a beautiful country with lots of amazing possibilities, and the only thing missing is you. Go to realestateguysradio.com under Events, and I look forward to seeing you in beautiful Belize.
Hi, this is Lawrence Yun, Chief Economist with National Association of Realtors, and you are listening to the Real Estate Guys.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. If you lack clarity and you want to make 2022 your best year yet, then come on out to Create Your Future. Our 2022 Goals Retreat happens the first full weekend of the new year in beautiful Lake Las Vegas, Nevada. It is filling up fast, but we'll make room for you if you hurry. Go to the website at realestateguysradio.com under events, where you'll see Create Your Future. It's Ask the Guys, your questions, our answers. If you want to send a question to us, you can do that at the website too. Just hit the button that says Ask the Guys. Lots of them come in. We do our best to answer the ones we think will be the most appropriate for the most number of our listeners. And we have kind of a theme going today, which is people either pivoting or getting into real estate or starting out. These next two questions kind of go together in my mind, so I want to read them both, and then Russ and I will address them. The first is from John in Puyallup, Washington. He says, guys, I'm a 58-year-old male that was taught to work hard, save money in your 401k, Roth IRA, and you will be able to retire someday. I just found your podcast, and I'm now convinced that I'm screwed. How do I start building real wealth? How do I get educated? What's my first step? I don't want to teach my children the same failed lessons that I have learned. Help, please. Thank you, John. Awesome, John. Thank you for your candor. Hold that thought. Lewis from Lowell, Massachusetts says, hey guys, I'm definitely a rookie when it comes to investing in real estate, but being an 18-plus year mechanic, I just want to do better. And listening to you guys makes me want to. Can you help? I'm not looking for handouts, but some direction would be appreciated. All right, so excellent. Thanks, guys. Here's a couple of guys who are saying, hey, I've figured it all out and I've been at it for a while. What do I do?
Yeah. So I think that the first thing is realizing that you need to change, and that's great. And it's not just the circumstances that need to change, but you need to change. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you as a human being. It just means that the way you think and what you believe and the way you've behaved have led to results, and you're realizing, hey, this isn't the result I was looking for. So you have to go back to the beginning of that process. And I think that's kind of what John is realizing, is like, hey, I bought this narrative, and all of a sudden this thing is not panning out the way I thought. And that's largely the way the world has been working these days. Inflation is really hurting people who don't own assets that grow as a result of inflation, and all they see is their expenses going up and their cash flow from earnings continues to go down in real terms. And so it really gets to be a problem. So the key is, well, how do you defeat that? Well, leverage financing. When you take out loans against real assets like real estate that come along with tax breaks and income to pay for the debt, then you've secured the price in today's terms. And as inflation works its way through the system, it causes over time prices to rise. And as we wrote about in our book, equity happens. And you are the beneficiary of that equity. And if you can imagine buying two houses right next to each other, 100% financed, and never paying down a single penny on the debt on either property in 10 years at 7.2% annual average inflation, those properties are going to double in value. You sell one and pay the other one off completely. And you did it all with debt. So the best thing that both of you have to work with is your income and your credit score. And you want to get teamed up with a good mortgage professional who can help you make the most of that. Well, you're doing that, and it may take you a year or so while you're organizing yourself to be an optimal borrower for the best mortgages. It may take less. It depends on what you have to work with, but they'll tell you that's where you start investing in your education. And you're listening to podcasts like ours, that's great. And there's many other good ones out there. Attend seminars, real estate investing clubs. If you have an opportunity to go on a field trip and actually tour some markets and meet some people, I would recommend doing that also. Along the way, you may meet some people you can partner with. Somebody brings a down payment, somebody else brings a credit score, and you can get into a deal sooner. You may be able to find some folks that have some skills. If you're in a market that is actually a good investment market, you might be able to do some value added work there where you kind of fix the thing up and force the equity. That's a way to go. If you're not in a market that is good to invest in that regard, then you're probably not going to be able to do it that way as easily. It's hard to run a remote project, but really focus on understanding the value of debt and the value of teams. And your job is to put the teams together, pair it with the debt, and you can go raise equity. And again, we're just big fans of that. Most people look at what they have to work with and go, gee, I don't have enough. But really, everything you need is out there. You just have to find a way to attract it to yourself. And that is by offering it a piece of the action. You're bringing something to the table because you're willing to hustle. You're willing to do the work. You're willing to put people together, find the deal, organize the teams that are going to do the work, whatever contribution you're going to make. And then little by little, you grow and compound. And the idea that we talk about with breeding equity is you find one property and you create some equity in it, and then you harvest that equity, typically through a cash out refinance, and use it for a down payment on a second property. And you continue to repeat that process. And pretty soon, one property becomes two, two become four, four become eight, eight becomes 16. And over maybe a decade, 10, 15, 20 years, you can accumulate a large number of properties, a significant amount of equity, great tax breaks, great cash flow, and you've done most of it with debt. And that's the way the real estate game works. And it's not that complicated, but you really need to focus on the right things. Great markets, great teams.
So I couldn't agree more. I think getting around other investors is a way to collapse timeframes. Recognize that, hey, I'm a little later in life, and is it too late? Absolutely not. Our favorite thing to do is to show people how to get more sooner, and it can be done, but you got to leverage more than just your money. Now, you did talk about, Russ, the idea of pulling some money out of a property, and that may be an asset you have. To learn more about that, rather than spend another 7 minutes here, just send an email to cashout@realestateguysradio.com, cash out at realestateguysradio.com, and you get a report about how that works. But I think part of it is still getting in touch with your inner investors, so that's a great resource to go through the personal investment philosophy exercise. We call it an audio workshop. But you've also got to spend some time around people. So obviously, we do events. We'd love to have you come out to one. That'd be awesome. But in addition, in your home area, there's probably some real estate investment groups. Sometimes at the local junior college, you'll find real estate classes, and many times the people that attend those classes are there to learn so they can invest in property. So you got to expand kind of your mind and your network. And I would also say, just be strategic about it. Set aside a chunk of time every single week to focus on your real estate business. Well, you're saying, I don't have any real estate business. Exactly. So that's your education time. There's a ton of podcasts. There's a ton of great YouTube content. And don't get stuck in paralysis of analysis. Lead to action. But I think that's a great way. And as far as your kids go, thank you for your candor there. A great quote from David Bly is, your children will become what you are, so be what you want them to be. And if you don't think you're that yet, the fact that you'd be willing to be humble at your age and retool and make some changes, what a great lesson that is. So thanks, guys. Those are excellent questions, and hopefully there's other folks out there that can relate. It's Ask the Guys, your questions and our answers. Our next question is aimed squarely at our financial strategist. This comes from Angela in Torrance, California. She says, hi guys, my current mortgage loan terms are as follows: $2,776.50 per month at 3% for 180 months, and that loan matures in July 2030. My bank's offered to modify my loan to $1,546 a month at 2.875% interest for 480 months. So from a 15-year mortgage to a 40-year mortgage. I'd like some advice if I should proceed with the modified loan. I would like to venture into real estate investment. Would it be wise to refi and take the loan to invest in a passive income property? All right. Well, I know Russ is winded up and ready to answer this one.
Yeah. So, it's really interesting because what you have here is somebody that has been in a very conservative position. So, Angela, you've got basically a 15-year amortized loan, and you're pretty deep into it with only, 9 years left to go, not even quite 9 years. So what they're proposing, I think, is not a modification, but a refinance. And they're going to refinance the loan. They're going to stretch it out now to 40 years, which brings your payment way down. In terms of actual interest, you're going to pay more interest because you're restarting your amortization clock, and those $1,546 a month payments are going to be mostly interest, whereas your $2,776 payment is probably at this point substantially principal. So if you dig into an amortization table and look it up, you'll be able to see that. You can find that. Just Excel has a loan amortization calculator, and you can go in there and figure that out. So fundamentally, about what to do really depends on what it is you're trying to do and what you're willing to do. So in this case, it could be that one of your greatest sources of investment capital is the untapped equity in the property. I could make many, many arguments for why it makes sense to harvest that equity and put it to work, but you need to be very careful with it, because if you mess up, it's your home. And so you want to make sure that you've taken on wise investments that are going to be very resilient in various economic circumstances. And so it would be kind of a bigger strategy to talk about what to do. Obviously, the big benefit is right out of the gate, you lower your payment from $27.76 to $15.46. When you go to get your next loan on an investment property, that's going to improve what they call your debt to income ratios. And that'll give you more borrowing power, as we mentioned earlier in a previous question. In an inflationary environment, getting as much debt as you possibly can that comes along with the income and the tax breaks to service it can be a fantastic thing if you have a great team to manage those properties and make sure that income actually comes in and those properties remain well maintained. So I would say I wouldn't be afraid to make that move, because the thing is, if you restructure your loan, have access to the cash, and decide, well, I wish I didn't do that, you can just pay it all down. You can just begin to pay down. But to be liquid, to have a lower payment, and to have some investment capital on tap in case we end up in a little bit of a downturn where there's blood in the streets, as they say, and there's bargains, you'll be happy you have that equity. And then meanwhile, while you're deciding what to do, I'd really focus on, again, your education. That's kind of been a running theme throughout this episode. Lots of people out there, but this is the time to get educated. This is the time to get around people who are playing the game at a high level. This is the time to attend seminars and workshops, get out in the field and look at properties, meet teams, get a feel for what people are doing and how they're approaching the game of investing. And then stick your toe in the water. Don't go too deep into any one thing, because invest small in the beginning while you're learning and testing people. And once you kind of get your legs underneath you, then you can pick it up a little bit. But for me, I would definitely do it. I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm telling you what I would do. I just think that leaving equity sitting in a property untapped is really an idle, lazy balance sheet. The other thing is, if you just wanted to, you could pull the equity out and you could turn right around and invest it for probably 3 times the yield. So you borrow money out at 2.875, call it 3, turn around and invest it for income, say at 9. And you can look in our resource center. We've got people in there who can help you do that. You actually can have your equity in your house make that $1,546 a month payment, and now you're living for free. So there's a lot of things you can do with home equity when you know how to use it. So congratulations for being open to it. But remember, again, it's going to start with you and your skill as an investor and the teams that you're able to build. So don't just pull the money out and start throwing it around willy-nilly. Make sure you know what you're doing.
Now, a couple other things to consider, Angela. First of all, it was kind of an either or on, do I keep a loan that I'm 6 years into with only 9 years left, or do I start over with 40 years? Now, I know it's a lesser interest rate and lesser payments, but the new loan over the life of it, if you were to pay it all off, would be over $740,000 you'd pay back. The loan that you have right now at the higher payment will be less than $300,000, but you would have use of the money. So the choice of just do I refi versus what Russ is talking about, which refi, but while you're doing it, see if you can pull some more equity out. So you don't just change the terms, you get some cash in your hand. That's worth considering. It's Ask the Guys. Your questions, our answers. When we come back, it'll be our turn to ask you a question as we play Real Estate Trivia next. You're tuned to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms.
Need help with your real estate investment portfolio? Check out the resources page at realestateguysradio.com.
In uncertain times like this, it's great to know there are 2 things you can always count on: high demand for affordable single-family homes to live in, and Terry Kerr's amazing Memphis team at Mid-South Home Buyers to find, fix, and manage the next addition to your recession-resistant real estate portfolio. The Memphis market is logistics and distribution dynamo with an economic engine that's essential to moving goods and critical supplies all over the United States. Quality rehab, proven profitable property management, affordable rents, and solid ROI make turnkey property investing through Terry's team a dream when it matters most. To learn more about Memphis and Mid-South Home Buyers, send an email to midsouth@realestateguysradio.com. That's midsouth@realestateguysradio.com.
If you love real estate and have always wanted to own your own business, listen up. The Real Estate Guys and their panel of experts want to teach you how to go full-time fast in the real estate syndication business. These next few years may go down in history as one of the best times ever to acquire investment real estate. There are deals everywhere if you know where to look and how to assemble the resources. The Secrets of Successful Syndication seminar will show you how to make big money doing big deals from a team of experts that have syndicated projects totaling more than $1 billion. Don't wait for someone to give you a raise or create a job for you. Attend the Secrets of Successful Syndication and learn how to build a team, raise capital, find deals, and make full-time money in 6 months or less. Go to realestateguysradio.com and click on events. All the big players use syndication as a way to diversify risk, optimize profits, and earn big money. You can too. Go to realestateguysradio.com and click on events.
Hi, this is Kevin Harrington, an original shark from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and you're listening to The Real Estate Guys.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. Hey, we've just announced our next Belize Discovery trip. If you want to come hang out with me in beautiful Belize, and why wouldn't you? Come visit us April 1st through the 4th, 2022. A big hello to all the fantastic folks who were on our Belize Discovery trip earlier this month. It's not too late to check out Belize. Get all the details at realestateguysradio.com. Under the tab that says Events, just look for the Belize Discovery trips. It's Ask the Guys, your questions, our answers, a bunch more on the way. But first, let's ask you a question. It's time to play Real Estate Trivia. It's your chance to win a prize by knowing today's Real Estate Trivia question. In just a minute, I'll give you a question that has something to do with real estate in the world. And your mission is to figure out the answer as soon as you think you know it. Email that along with your name and physical mailing address to trivia@realestateguysradio.com, trivia@realestateguysradio.com. We need your address so that if you're the winner, we can send you a vintage copy of the awesome bestseller Tax-Free Wealth by our good friend CPA Tom Wheelwright. That can be yours if you know today's real estate trivia question. Last week on the program, we were talking about market selection with Ingo Windsor, and we asked this: for 2020, which U.S. real estate market had the shortest number of average days on the market? And the answer is Virginia Beach, Virginia. Yeah, that was the fastest place to sell a house last year, followed by Alexandria, Virginia, Durham, North Carolina, Berkeley, California, and Tempe, Arizona. In case you're wondering where it took the longest to sell real estate last year, the 5 slowest markets: Yonkers, New York, Miami Beach, Florida, Fort Smith, Arkansas, New York, New York, and Lincoln, Nebraska. Here's our real estate trivia question for this week. Where is the world's largest bowling alley? Yeah, what real estate market houses the largest bowling alley in the world? If you think you know, send your best guess to trivia@realestateguysradio.com, trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Give us your name, your mailing address, and the answer to the question. First person that gets it right gets an original copy of Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. That's today's real estate trivia question. It's Ask the Guys. Your questions are answers. If you have a question for the Real Estate Guys, go to realestateguysradio.com, click the button that says Ask the Guys. We certainly can't answer every one, but we look through the mailbag and grab some questions that we think will have broad appeal to our audience. This one comes from Mike in Ridgefield, Connecticut. Hi guys, I'm a big fan of the show. I especially like going back to old Ask the Guys episodes that have The Godfather on. Well, we like that too, Mike. I'm 28 and I'm nearing the closing date on my first investment property. Congratulations. Which is a duplex in Kingston, New York, where I will be inheriting the tenants. The tenants have been in place for 3 to 5 years and have been paying the same below market rent for at least the last 3 years. I want to raise the rent closer to market, but I'm afraid I don't have much leverage if the tenant decides not to pay, since there is still an eviction moratorium in New York State until at least January. On the other hand, I'm afraid if I don't raise the rent, then the tenants will think rents stay at the current rate for the foreseeable future, and it may make it more difficult for me to raise them later. Would really appreciate your ideas in this type of situation. Thank you, Mike. Well, Mike, you're not alone in this. This is kind of the situation that landlords have faced in different parts of the country over the last couple of years. The eviction moratoriums have been gentle or terrible, just kind of depending on the situation. So what happens when a tenant is complacent? And that happens when you don't raise the rent, is the longer you go, the harder it is. My very first listing many, many years ago when I was listing real estate had a woman who was renting the property and had been for 30 years, and her rent hadn't been raised in 15 years. This may not mean anything to where you are in Connecticut, but in Palo Alto, California, she was paying less than $200 a month for a single family house. Current rent at the time was probably $2,800. Today it's probably closer to $15,000. So I think there's a hybrid here. You have to understand, if I'm buying in a market that has a moratorium, I might be subject to that. So that is a risk that you take. Long term, we are seeing moratoriums across the country soften or go away completely. So I'm going to guess that's going to happen. One of the last places is going to happen is going to be New York. But still, follow me on this. If you close on the property knowing that you know what the rent is now, you can instantly reach out to the tenant in a positive and empathetic way and say, "Dear new tenant, thrilled to have you as my tenant. I'm your new landlord. We're going to have a great relationship. You can probably imagine with the below market rent you're paying that I'd like to raise the rent closer to market value. But I'm not going to do that right now because I know it's been tough for folks with the pandemic and etc. Please feel free to reach out to me, and I will when it's time to raise the rents," or something like that. That's off the top of my head, but I think you get the idea. You want to establish a relationship quickly, and you want to make sure that they don't assume the rent's going to be like that forever. Now, you still might spook them and they might leave, but if they're not paying anyway, or you think they might not, that is probably okay. In this case, they're in a state where there's an eviction moratorium, and according to your email, it sounds like they've been paying. And if they're paying, I'd always rather get something a little less than market and get it than raise it to market and not.
Yeah, I mean, if they're paying in a market where there's an eviction moratorium where they could stop paying and without fear of eviction, maybe you don't want to kick a sleeping dog. You can always have that discussion later, but you can make that decision. I do think that what's important is if you're going to be playing property manager and you're not a professional, then you do need to be well advised by a real estate attorney, because what you don't want to do is violate New York landlord law. New York is pretty well known as being a tenant-friendly state, as is California and certain other states that are. You just have to really know what you're doing. So before you start communicating anything, especially in writing, make sure that you really do understand what your rights and responsibilities are as a landlord and what their rights are and responsibilities are as a tenant. And then operate within that. So there's the business side of it in terms of what you want to do for managing the relationship and setting the table for a future rent increase. And then there's the legal side of it, which is making sure that you're operating clearly within the law for your particular state and particular situation. And yes, it is a little bit of the wild, wild west right now because they've thrown in this wild card of eviction moratoriums, which some people don't even think is constitutional, yet is being implemented in some places and not others. And maybe you could win the lawsuit, maybe not, but who needs all that brain damage, right? Just figure out what the attorney says makes sense in your current environment and work within that guidance.
I have one more idea for you, Mike, and that is if you're inheriting tenants, you're probably inheriting the property manager, which doesn't have to be the same. You would always have the right to find a new property manager, but if this property manager is doing a good job, no reason to do that. But I would talk to a couple of other property managers in the area that have similar types of rentals and get their feedback on how the moratorium has affected the general market. So we're looking for a property manager that's got a lot of homes, not just one or two, so you can kind of get the feel. If a property manager has 200 houses, they'll be able to know what percentage of that inventory has been affected, but they'll also know kind of what the going state of the market is. So I think that's a resource for you. Thanks for your question, Mike. Speaking of recurring themes, our next question comes from Mike, a different Mike. This Mike is from Seattle, Washington. He says, "Greetings from Seatown. First, I have to admit that I've been listening to some of the other real estate podcasts out there, but nothing compares to you guys. There is never a show that I don't absolutely love, even Russ teaching us about his silver. All of us want to believe that inflation is good for real estate. Rents will go up, and thus the nominal value of our properties, while our debt remains constant. But what happens when you factor in the likely cap rate increase? As inflation increases, so usually do interest rates. When interest rates increase, so usually do capitalization rates. So, do you guys think the positive effect of an increase in NOI would typically outweigh the negative effect of an increase in cap rates? Thanks, Mike." Well, that is an awesome question, and that is one for a financial strategist for sure.
Yeah, well, and it's also got some economics in there. So good on you, Mike, just understanding that inflation is good for real estate and that the key is to control it with debt. So you laid that out perfectly. The concern is, and I actually just spoke on this topic at a multifamily conference last week about interest rates. And the thing is, if you understand the financial system, which is made up of leveraged bonds, and if interest rates were to go up, it would cause those bond values to drop because bond values, like apartment values, operate inversely to their yields the same way apartment buildings operate inversely to the cap rates. The Fed is kind of boxed into a corner, as our good friend Peter Schiff has been saying for quite some while, the monetary Roach Motel. You get in, but you can't get out. So interest rates are not going to go up on purpose, I don't think. Doesn't mean they won't go up. They just won't go up on purpose. The Fed will fight it tooth and nail because the entire system would implode if interest rates went up. They're really driving towards what I think is what everybody's referring to as a great reset. We'll see how that all plays out. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the equity in the property, it's less of a concern because what happens is if you have debt that you can control on a property with the cash flow, and you have an increase in cap rates, which is a decrease in price, meaning the income didn't go up, and that's not what caused the imbalance, but the price went down, you've lost your equity. The equity receipts, it's the first thing that disappears. The debt remains constant. It's the flip side of inflation, right? The equity receipts. But I don't believe that can be allowed to sustain. And I think that what happens is inflation comes, people get poorer, and then more people are moving into affordable housing. And I think that puts upward pressure on things like apartments and affordable housing. I'm not saying cap rates couldn't go way up along with interest rates. I just really don't see that being the most probable outcome. Our good friend George Gammon always talks about the importance of playing the probabilities. I don't hear anybody out there really thinking that that's a likely scenario. But if you've harvested as much equity as you can, well, the equity and the low interest rates are there, locked it in for the long term, keep a little dry powder, and actually hope that cap rates do go up, because then you're going to be able to go in and snap up properties on a bargain. And history says the Fed will step in and reflate real estate and generate even more inflation. I think they'll sacrifice the dollar long before they will sacrifice the bond market. And as long as the bond market needs to be preserved, interest rates will stay low, and real estate is a big part of that. That's why the Fed puts $40 billion a month into mortgage-backed securities. So that's kind of a big, long answer. But you have to be prepared for it. I think the way to be prepared for it is have debt that you can weather in the long term and control with good, prudent cash flow, and keep as much equity out of the property as possible.
I had a pretty new investor ask me, so let me get this straight. Are high capitalization rates good or low capitalization rates? And I said, well, it depends on who you are, right? Are you buying? Are you selling? Are you holding? And so we do want to think about not just what's happening in terms of inflation and the changes that may be coming, but also the fact that, as Russ talked about, just good, solid, cash flowing property. Whatever happens in the market, as people say get paid more, then likely they'll be able to afford higher rent, and that rent works its way to you. So we don't get too caught up in it, but you are paying attention, and that you get marks for. Good stuff. It's Ask the Guys, your questions, our answers, today on the Real Estate Guys radio program.
Live nationwide, you're listening to the Real Estate Guys. Find out more at realestateguys.radio.com.
Are you achieving everything you want in life? What if there was a time-tested way for you to get all you've dreamed of? The most successful people in life set goals and keep themselves accountable. But how? The good news is that it's not rocket science. You too can learn the skills and unleash the motivation that will create success in your life. And now is the time. Hi, this is Robert Helms, and I'd like to personally invite you to attend Create Your Future, the 2022 Goals Retreat, January 7th to 9th in beautiful Lake Las Vegas, Nevada. This unique weekend event has been called phenomenal, inspirational, and life-changing by the thousands of people that have attended. Hear from some of them and find out more at realestateguysradio.com under events, or call 888-489-7723 extension 18 to reserve your spot. Get your life back on track, physically, spiritually, and financially. Attend the live in-person 2022 Goals Retreat on the second weekend of the new year. Click events at realestateguysradio.com to register. This is no dress rehearsal. Live the life you were meant to. Visit realestateguysradio.com or call 888-489-7723 extension 18 today.
Hey, ever wished you could go back in time and do some tax planning? Now you can, just like Marty McFly. Lucky for you, a brand new federal law just made this possible with an EQRP to get tax deductions and reduce your taxable income from last year, so you can use that tax savings to invest in real estate, Bitcoin, gold, even your own business. Whether you're a full-time investor, doctor, government employee, even if you have 5 or 50 employees, the EQRP works and is your secret weapon, and now it's retroactive. Hey, I'm Damian Lupo, and we have your solution. By the way, if you got bad advice and used an IRA for an apartment syndication, you are sitting on a U-bit time bomb. But don't worry, there's a solution, the EQRP. The EQRP company is ready to help you get control of your money, kill U-bit, and help you pay way less taxes. Want to learn more about this strategy? Send an email to eqrp@realestateguysradio.com for my special EQRP report. Paying tax or letting Wall Street suck you dry is dumb. Your first step is freeing your retirement money by sending an email to eqrp@realestateguysradio.com today.
Hi, this is Chris Martinson, author of Prosper, and you are listening to The Real Estate Guys.
And welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. Thanks for tuning into the show. If you've ever want to do bigger deals using other people's money, or if you'd like to passively invest with folks that are doing those big deals, well, come on out to the Secrets of Successful Syndication. It happens in March in Dallas, Texas. You can get all the details at realestateguysradio.com under events. It's Ask the Guys. We love it when you ask questions, and we got a big pile of them. In fact, we'll do another Ask the Guys show sooner than the many months it's been this time. We try to do it every 8 to 10 weeks, but there's been a lot to talk about, and we've got a lot of good questions left. This one comes from Kimberly in East Hanover, New Jersey. Hi, my 18-year-old is just sitting for his real estate exam, and I'd like to know if you have a series of courses online that he could take to learn about leveraging debt and real estate, etc. He's starting at zero. Thoughts? Thanks. Well, Kimberly, congratulations. Very excited when young people get involved in real estate, whether it's as a vendor, a seller in the industry somewhere, helping with title or escrow or mortgage. And of course, if they do that, we'd hope they would do the other, which would be, as Jim Rohn said, kids should have a bicycle to ride and a bicycle to rent. You should have a house to live in and one or more to rent out. So good stuff. I think there's a couple of resources. We don't have that exact course you're looking for beginning real estate agents, but we have a big heart for it. The way Russ and I met 20 years ago was at a course that I did called Jumpstart Your Real Estate Business, designed to show brand new real estate agents exactly how they could become Rookie of the Year. Russ's daughter at the time was a mere 17. She wanted to get in real estate, very similar, I'm guessing, to your son. He brought her to that, and that started what you know as the Real Estate Guys today in many, many ways. And it does take some education, but I think there's a lot more to it than that. I'll let Russ talk about maybe some resources that he sees. I instantly see an amazing resource that could be perfect for your son. And that is once a year we do our highest level event. It's called our Investor Summit. It is a lot of time and a lot of money, but we have a young investors program for folks that are 18 to 25 where they get to come and pay less than the actual cost of the event. So we subsidize young adults. And then if they can't afford that, we actually have a scholarship program. And that would give your son a chance to get around all kinds of amazing real estate investors doing different things in different places, and a big handful of real estate agents who could give him some guidance about, if I were you and I were starting again, here's what I'd do.
Yeah. So when you get your real estate license, you're getting into the business of brokering and you're representing buyers and sellers, and it puts you into the game. It puts you into the market. It lets you learn the market, the local market that you're operating in, and the inventory may or may not be good for investing. That's a different discussion. In terms of actually working with the clients, if he's giving them that type of guidance, he probably wants to team up with a mortgage professional, maybe a CPA. One of the things that we did early in our career when I was in the mortgage business is we put together an alliance of financial professionals, and we all worked together as a team to educate each other and to educate investors. And then in the course of doing that, of course, we did a lot of business, and that really became part of our marketing and the motto of education for effective transaction is how we handled growing our real estate brokerage and mortgage practice. But those are great environments to go into. The other thing is to look for a seasoned real estate agent that deals in investment property. You know, when I first met Robert and Bob, that's what they were doing. And it was a great opportunity for my then 17-year-old daughter to go to work with them. And she saw a lot and learned a lot. And we learned by doing. And then I started applying financial strategies to the things that I saw Bob and Robert doing. And then those became training modules and some of the things we did. And then, you know, I kind of have this way of looking at things outside the box and looking at the tax advantages and different ways to approach the problem, especially based on the concept of arbitrage. But these aren't really high level financial concepts. You just have to learn how to use them. But I think you learn them in real world application. And at 18 years old, rather than sitting through a course and trying to learn it bookwise, it'd be like trying to teach somebody how to ride a bike. I think it's better to get involved with a group, have him join a real estate investment club in the area. It'd be great networking, great place to meet potential investors, put together an alliance of other perhaps young, ambitious colleagues that are in adjacent businesses. A mortgage professional would be great. Probably a tax person would be great. Those are usually the three or the two or three that would make sense: real estate, mortgage, and tax. Then look for seasoned investors to work with as clients, learn from them. If you get a chance to get into a mentoring program, do that. That makes a lot of sense. It can be a great investment, much cheaper than college, will make you way more money. So that would be my advice. I think the academic education is interesting, but you really learn it watching creative real estate investors do what they do in the real world.
Give you a couple more things. Great idea that I taught for years and years because it's something I did for years and years. You have your son go to the top producing agent that he knows in the marketplace or in his office and say, hey, can I buy you lunch? And agents are busy, but they got to eat. And he sits down, buys lunch for this top producing multimillionaire and says, if you were me and you were starting over, what would you do? And just whatever comes out of that agent's mouth is going to be gold. So the other thing I would say is check out The Godfather's awesome book. My dad wrote a book called Be in the Top 1%, which is really about helping real estate agents understand investment property, because the average home buyer will buy a home every 4 to 7 years, while the average investor might buy a home every year or even more often. So congratulations, and we wish your son success. Our last question today comes from Tommy, all the way in Melbourne, Australia. Good day, team. So I own one home only, and I'm currently living in it with my family. My wife and I love our house, and the area is fantastic. It's an inner city home in the heart of Melbourne, Australia. It's very tiny, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, has a very small kitchen, living area, and courtyard. We currently owe the bank $300,000, which I'm not happy about, and the place is worth $1.4 to $1.5 million. We can comfortably make the payments, but I'm scared with the current climate and the 2030 world agenda that's in place. You know, you'll own nothing and be happy. I'm worried that banks will foreclose in the near future and I'll have to rent my house from the government. Am I better off selling my house and moving out to the countryside and buying land and paying for a house outright and not having any connection with the banks and government whatsoever? Thanks, Tommy. All right, well, I know Russ has some opinion on this. I'll tell you this, I'm certainly happy that I invested in Melbourne, Australia nearly 20 years ago, and I get the pricing. If you don't know Melbourne, it is a dense city. It's a lot of fun, and I don't know about during lockdown, maybe not quite as much fun, but I do understand the idea. You got this house, it's not very big, but it's worth a lot. You don't owe that much against it. What do? I'll let Russ speak to, the government, those kinds of things. But I will say this, that it's a completely different lifestyle to live in a house and make a payment on a loan than it is to be out in the country and no payment. And that might be a way to go because you have less counterparty risk, which is what you're talking about. But I'm going to guess if something globally happens like you're talking about, it's going to kind of permeate everywhere. So another possibility would be to borrow more against it and use that money to go out in the country and buy a second place, what Doug Casey might call a bolt hole, a place you could bolt in the middle of the night if you're worried about being in downtown Melbourne. But I know Russ has some thoughts.
Well, yeah, because it's basically this concept of arbitrage that I talk about all the time. I don't know what the loan rates are or the cash out refinance rules are in Australia. But if I was looking at the situation in the States, my answer would be, hey, take $1 million out of that property at 3% or 4%, invest half of it at 8% or 9%. And again, go to our resource center. There are people in there that can help you get those types of yields on asset-backed investments. So you get good, steady cash flow coming in. And now you've got $500,000 free and clear. Now, if you need more, you can have it actually make your payment for you. And, you can mix and match however you want to do that. Or you can take a chunk of it and go buy land out in the country that doesn't have any payment associated with it whatsoever. Maybe put some gold in your safe also while you're at it. If you're concerned about being completely off the grid, you can have your cake and eat it too. The key is arbitrage. The beautiful thing is you've got equity. And you're right, if the banks foreclose, you lose your equity. And if they disrupt your income to the point where you can't even make the loans on that $300,000 payment, now you're in trouble. Doesn't make any difference if you miss a $300,000 payment or $1 million payment. In terms of foreclosure, you lose the property either way. The difference is if you've pulled $1 million out, you still have the $1 million. And so just understand, separating the equity from the property can make a ton of sense in today's environment because rates are so low. The key isn't accessing the equity. The key is making sure that you invest the equity in such a way that you can comfortably make those payments and you end up with some free cash where you can isolate that from a lot of the risks that we see. The one thing I think you don't want to do, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, not giving you financial advice, is leave $1 million sitting there in a property idle doing nothing. And it's all it is at risk to the market, and it's at risk to foreclosure, and it's at risk to, whatever types of lawsuits or liens or seizures might happen in an oppressive regime. And of course, I don't know what it's like really living in Australia, but from what I've been reading and seeing, it looks like it's pretty intense over there. So I'm glad that you're happy in your place. I hope that your quality of life is remaining good. But boy, I definitely would give some consideration to trying to get off the grid a little bit. I think that might not be a bad plan.
Crikey! Well, thank you, Tommy, for that question. And for everyone today, lots more questions than we could get to, which is always the case. But we'll make room for some more. If you have a question for the Real Estate Guys, go to realestateguysradio.com, click the button that says Ask the Guys. Next week on the show, it's going to be fabulous. Until then, enjoy this festive time of the year, and we'll see you next week on the Real Estate Guys. Go out and make some equity happen.
This episode of the Real Estate Guys radio show is brought to you by Paradigm Life. Powerful cash management strategies using life insurance. Learn more at beyourbank.com. Mid-South Home Buyers, low-cost, turnkey cash flow properties in Memphis, Tennessee. Corporate Direct, asset protection strategies for real estate investors from attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Find these and other great companies under the Resources tab at realestateguysradio.com. To learn how you can expose your product or service to the Real Estate Guys audience, call 888-489-7723 extension 4. That's 888-489-7723 extension 4. Or use the feedback page at realestateguysradio.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week right here on the Real Estate Guys Radio Show.